Welcome to today's deep dive. We are really thrilled you're joining us.
Absolutely. It's great to be here.
So today, our mission is to solve a very specific problem that, honestly, almost every professional faces right now.
Yeah, whether you are running a small local business or, sitting in a massive corporate boardroom.
Exactly. We want to figure out how to stop drowning in raw data and start extracting those actual needle-moving aha moments that drive real success.
Because there's just so much noise out there right now.
There really is. And the source material for this deep dive is a fantastic book called Unlocking Business Insights, The Basics by Dr. Aneesh Banerjee.
Which is essentially a practical manifesto for moving past the rearview mirror of basic dashboards.
It's incredibly timely, too. I mean, considering how many organizations are just sitting on vast oceans of data, but totally failing to harness any predictive power from it.
Right. They have the numbers, but no real direction.
To set the stage for you, the listener, the book opens with this highly relatable anecdote. There is a successful tanning spa owner who has 15 years of transaction data sitting in her system.
15 years.
15 years of daily operations. But she has absolutely no way to predict the future.
None.
She relies entirely on her own gut intuition to make decisions because her off-the-shelf software, which is perfectly fine for, say, booking a Tuesday afternoon appointment, completely lacks the ability to generate predictive insights.
Yeah, she knows her market, but her data isn't telling her anything new.
Right.
And that spa owner really represents the baseline for so many businesses today. To diagnose where a company is stuck, the book introduces this foundational framework called the knowledge ladder.
The knowledge ladder.
Yeah, you can think of this as an audit tool for your own organization.
Yeah.
So the bottom rung is simply data. This is raw, it's technical, timestamps, IP addresses.
A giant list of credit card transactions.
Exactly.
We all know what raw data looks like, and we know that alone, it's just noise.
Completely. So the next rung up is information. This is data that has been structured.
Yeah, correct.
For example, turning those raw timestamps into a daily report showing foot traffic. It's more readable, but it's still highly generic, usually totally automated.
So to get actual value, you have to climb higher.
Right, to the third rung, which is knowledge. This is where context enters the picture. Knowledge is the direct answer to a specific question a human being has formulated.
So instead of just pulling a generic report on daily visitors, you are asking the system something like, did our recent promotional campaign actually drive a sustained increase in foot traffic?
Yes, exactly. You're giving it a job to do.
Which leads us to the very top of the ladder, the absolute pinnacle insight.
The aha moment.
Right. This is the unexpected pattern. It's the moment you discover through your inquiry that the campaign didn't just work, it worked specifically and overwhelmingly with young urban professionals who book within 2 hours of their appointment.
That is the insight that fundamentally alters your marketing strategy.
And if you are sitting there listening, wondering why you should urgently care about auditing your position on this ladder, the author cites this landmark study by Brynjolfsson.
Oh, this stat is incredible.
It really is. It revealed that data-driven organizations enjoy 5 to 6% higher output and productivity than their direct peers.
5 to 6%.
In a highly saturated market, that is the difference between thriving and going bankrupt.
Absolutely.
Mastering this isn't just for data scientists anymore. It is a prerequisite for surviving in today's landscape. So let's get into the first major strategy. Okay, let's unpack this. Why is a number in a vacuum completely meaningless?
Because without context, a number tells you absolutely nothing about performance.
Right.
If a division reports $10 million in revenue, that sounds impressive, right?
Right.
Until you learn the market average is 50 million.
Then you're actually failing.
Exactly. Numbers only reveal their true narrative through comparison. We need external benchmarks. And when used correctly, they are incredible tools for visual storytelling. The book highlights the recent AI boom with a brilliant look at NVIDIA.
The charts on this in the source material are striking. If you pull up NVIDIA's stock price over the last couple of years, you see this meteoric rise.
Just a rocket ship.
It's an impressive line going up and to the right, but that isolated chart doesn't tell you if NVIDIA is driving a revolution or just riding a generally strong stock market.
Right. So to extract the insight, the author compares NVIDIA to the NASDAQ and the S&P 500.
But comparing raw stock prices directly is messy, right? Because they operate on entirely different scales.
Very messy. So instead, the data is rebased. You set NVIDIA, the NASDAQ, and the S&P 500 to an index of 100 on one very specific date, November 30th, 2022.
Which is the exact day ChatGPT launched to the public.
Spot on. By anchoring all three lines to a value of 100 on that precise day, you strip away all the historical noise, and a massive divergence suddenly appears.
It's night and day.
Fast forward 1 year to November 2023. The broader market, the S&P 500, has crawled up to roughly 115. The tech-heavy NASDAQ Q sits around 125.
And NVIDIA.
NVIDIA's line has shot up to nearly 250.
Wow.
This benchmark proves definitively that NVIDIA isn't just succeeding. It is the primary engine of a specific AI gold rush, totally decoupled from the broader market wave.
Of course, not every business is tracking against the S&P 500. If you are our tanning spa owner, you have to look inward.
You don't have global indices to compare against.
Right, but you can create highly effective internal benchmarks by segmenting your own customer relationship management or CRM data. Let's say she looks at her customer records and sees the average time since a customer's last visit is 15 days.
That's a solid baseline.
It is. But by splitting that data internally by gender, a totally new narrative emerges. She might find that her male customers actually buy more frequently, averaging 3.3 purchases compared to 2.4 for women.
And they return sooner, too.
Exactly. Every 13.8 days versus 16.9 days for the female customers.
She has just created an internal benchmark that completely changes how she allocates her local advertising spend.
It changes everything.
What's fascinating here is how vital it is to ensure you are always comparing likes for likes.
Yes, absolute numbers deceive us constantly.
Constantly, especially when dealing with entities of vastly different sizes. Consider the music streaming industry in 2023.
Oh, the Apple versus Spotify comparison.
Right. Apple's services revenue grew by a staggering $7.07 billion. In that same period, Spotify's total revenue grew by $1.52 billion.
So just looking at those absolute dollar amounts, it suggests Apple is completely dominating Spotify.
But when you convert those absolute dollars into percentages, the entire reality flips.
How so?
Spotify's $1.52 billion increase actually represented a 12.2% growth rate. Apple's $7.07 billion was only a 9.0% growth.
So percentages normalize the data.
Exactly. They reveal operational efficiency relative to scale. Spotify was growing its base faster than Apple's services division, despite Apple having infinitely more cash on hand.
Retailers face this illusion of scale all the time, too. A supermarket chain might report a 30% increase in total revenue for the fiscal year. The board pops the champagne, everyone celebrates.
But if they open 20 new locations that year, that 30% is not organic growth.
It's an illusion.
It is simply the mathematical output of operating more cash registers.
That is precisely why massive retailers like Tesco and Sainsbury's rely heavily on a metric called same-store sales.
It's the only way to know the truth.
It strictly compares revenue from stores that have been open for at least one full year. It completely strips out the noise of new real estate acquisitions.
It proves whether your actual merchandising, pricing, and customer service strategies are working on the ground.
It forces you to look at the underlying reality rather than the inflated aggregate.
And understanding that underlying reality requires a deep understanding of time. Everything we just discussed, a revenue report, a same-store sales metric, is essentially a snapshot.
Right, but business isn't a snapshot. It's a continuous movie. Looking at data over time is the only way to distinguish a temporary blip from a permanent reality.
The Netflix anomaly is the perfect example of this.
Let's talk about that. In the first half of 2020, Netflix gained an unprecedented 25 million new subscribers. If you were an executive looking at that isolated snapshot, you might build your entire 5-year strategic infrastructure around the assumption that this hypergrowth was the new baseline.
Zooming out to look at the long-term historical trend reveals that 2020 was a massive pandemic-driven anomaly.
Everyone was stuck at home.
Exactly. Growth inevitably regressed back to historical norms. Assuming that a sudden spike will just continue indefinitely in a straight line is a fast track to overhiring and overspending.
You have to categorize the trends you are seeing. There are cyclical trends, like the UK grocery chain Sainsbury's selling 90% more ice cream during an unusually warm week in early summer.
That is a recurring, predictable cycle. It does not fundamentally alter the grocery business.
The flip side of that is a structural trend. This is a permanent reshaping of the commercial landscape, the persistent rise of global e-commerce or the aging demographics in Europe and Japan.
Those are not seasonal blips. They are tectonic shifts that demand entirely new business models.
So to spot those structural shifts before your competitors do, you have to audit where you are actually looking. Most managers spend their days obsessing over lagging indicators.
Revenue, quarterly profits, national GDP.
Right, metrics that tell you what has already happened. By the time your revenue drops on a spreadsheet, the underlying structural trend that caused it has been in motion for 6 months.
You want to shift your focus to leading indicators. These are the metrics that point to what is about to happen. Web traffic to your pricing page, shopping cart abandonment rates, advanced airline bookings.
Going back to our tanning spa owner, a leading indicator might be a local forecast for a rainy week or a spike in searches for local vacations.
Yes, those give you the crucial heads up needed to anticipate an inflection point. That exact moment, a trend bends and changes direction.
Acting on those leading indicators requires an evolution in how a company handles analytics, though. The majority of businesses are stuck in descriptive analytics. They just ask, what happened?
And when they attempt to forecast the future, they rely on linear forecasting, effectively drawing a straight line from past performance into tomorrow.
Which dangerously assumes the future will be an exact replica of the past, completely ignoring the messiness and seasonality of the real world.
Moving to predictive analytics changes the question entirely to what is likely to happen. The book dives into a powerful concept here called exponential trend smoothing, or ETS.
ETS.
Right. Instead of a rigid straight line, ETS is a sophisticated way of forecasting that treats data differently based on its age.
Because older data is less relevant.
Exactly. The exponential part means that the weight given to past data decays exponentially. What happened yesterday heavily influences the forecast. What happened 2 years ago has very little influence.
This allows the model to react to recent market shocks, like a new competitor opening across the street, while the smoothing aspect irons out daily static and accounts for recurring seasonal peaks and valleys.
It's important to note, for anyone implementing this, that predictive analytics doesn't spit out a single magical guarantee.
It's not a crystal ball.
No, it provides a 95% confidence interval. It might tell you that based on the ETS model, we are 95% confident next month's sales will fall between $8 million and $12 million.
It maps out a probable range of outcomes so you can plan for actual uncertainty.
And once you have that probable range, you graduate to prescriptive analytics.
Which asks, what should we do about it?
Exactly. This involves optimization and simulation. If the predictive model shows a high probability that demand for winter jackets will spike by 20%, the prescriptive model helps you simulate the choices.
Like deciding whether it is more profitable to rush order premium inventory at a higher shipping cost or offer early season discounts to smooth out the supply chain bottleneck. Here's where it gets really interesting, the human chessboard. Because all of these predictive and prescriptive models eventually collide with how human beings actually make choices.
And humans are complicated.
Very. When we talk about human behavior, we have to talk about trade-offs. You cannot simply send out a survey asking people what they want.
Those are just stated preferences.
Right. If you ask your customers, do you want a premium ad-free experience for $0? Everyone checks the yes box.
Businesses go bankrupt catering to stated preferences.
You have to uncover revealed preferences. What do people actually prioritize when they are forced to make a painful compromise?
The most effective tool for extracting this is conjoint analysis.
Conjoint analysis.
Yeah. Instead of asking what they want, you present customers with different bundles of features and prices and force them to choose one over the others.
The book uses Starbucks' loyalty program as a brilliant real-world application of this. Starbucks ran a conjoint analysis on their rewards system.
Because on a standard survey, customers would naturally state they wanted to earn free drinks much faster.
Of course. But the conjoint analysis, which forced them to weigh different programmatic rules against each other, revealed something entirely different. Customers actually hated the expiration of their existing points far more than they loved the idea of accumulating new rewards quickly.
The psychological friction of losing points was actively driving casual coffee drinkers to competitors.
So by relaxing the expiration rules, Starbucks didn't have to give away more free coffee. They just removed the specific pain point that the customer revealed was a deal breaker.
And the casual demographic immediately re-engaged.
The author also outlines a hypothetical study for a streaming service that really drives this home.
Oh, this one is great.
Yeah, when forced to make trade-offs between subscription price, the sheer size of the content catalog, and the presence of advertisements, the consumer decisions broke down to 40% price, 35% content breadth, and 25% ad presence.
That specific weighting is a massive strategic insight.
It really is. It proves that offering a rock-bottom price will not save your platform if you force unskippable ads onto a demographic that values an ad-free experience almost as much as they value the monetary savings.
You have to measure the exact weight of those compromises.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, you have to remember that you aren't making these strategic trade-offs in a vacuum. Your competitors are highly intelligent, highly reactive players looking at their own dashboards.
This introduces game theory into the equation. Your business outcomes are entirely interdependent.
If you slash your prices by 20%, your isolated predictive model might forecast a massive spike in volume.
But if your competitor instantly matches your price cut, your sales volume stays exactly the same, and now both of you are operating on terrible, unsustainable profit margins.
That is the classic prisoner's dilemma. It explains why the airline industry so frequently spirals into destructive price wars.
One carrier cuts fares to fill seats, the others are forced to match just to survive, and suddenly the entire sector is bleeding cash.
We see the same dynamic with consumer goods giants like Procter & Gamble and Unilever.
Right. They both spend exorbitant amounts on advertising, not because the return on investment is stellar, but out of a mutual, paralyzing fear that if one pulls back, the other will capture the entire market.
Game theory also illuminates why certain wars don't happen through repeated games.
Like Coca-Cola and Pepsi.
Exactly. Why do Coke and Pepsi rarely engage in race-to-the-bottom pricing?
Because they aren't playing a one-off match. They play a repeated game globally every single day.
They both understand the math of mutually assured margin destruction. As a result, they choose to compete fiercely on brand marketing and distribution logistics rather than destroying the category's pricing power.
Then you have sequential games, where the timing and order of moves dictate the entire board. Look at the rivalry between Boeing and Airbus in the late 90s.
Right.
Airbus decided to develop and launch the massive A380 Super Jumbo aircraft first. By moving first and securing early commitments from major airlines, they forced Boeing to react rather than innovate on their own terms.
Making a massive, credible commitment first reshapes the strategic landscape for everyone else.
All of these frameworks, the conjoint analysis, the game theory, the predictive models, they're all incredibly powerful.
Yeah.
But there is a final massive hurdle that can render all of this pristine data completely useless.
The human brain.
Yes.
Even with perfect governance, we misinterpret data because our brains are hardwired to take cognitive shortcuts. The book outlines several dangerous biases.
The halo effect is a huge one.
We assume that because Apple makes a flawless iPhone, their foray into electric vehicles or television must also be flawless. Managers do this internally constantly, blindly funding a division just because the leader had one past success.
We also battle loss aversion. Kodak is the textbook tragedy here.
They literally invented the core technology for the digital camera.
But because their legacy film business was so massively profitable, they refused to cannibalize it. They were so terrified of losing their sunk costs that they held on to a dying structural trend until it bankrupted them.
Add to that survivorship bias, walk into any bookstore and you will see dozens of manuals telling you to copy Amazon's exact growth strategy.
What those books conveniently omit are the hundreds of failed startups that executed that exact same strategy and went under.
If you only study the survivors, your data set is hopelessly skewed.
To combat these mental traps, the author highlights a fantastic tactic from Andy Grove, the legendary former CEO of Intel.
Ah, such a good trick.
When his executive team was paralyzed by confirmation bias regarding a failing product line, he would ask them, if we were fired today and the board brought in a brand new CEO, what strategy would they pursue?
It's brilliant. It instantly severs the emotional, ego-driven attachment to past decisions and forces the team to look at the data objectively as an outsider would.
This raises an important question, though. What happens when the underlying data itself is fundamentally flawed or collected unethically?
This is where data governance and ethics transition from IT buzzwords to existential business threats.
Consider the real estate platform Zillow. A few years ago, they lost over $300 million and had to completely liquidate their home flipping division.
The public narrative blamed bad AI, but the algorithm was executing perfectly.
The root cause was flawed housing data feeding the Zestimate algorithm. A failure in basic data governance literally destroyed hundreds of millions of dollars in corporate value.
Ethics carries the exact same weight. Amazon famously had to scrap an internal AI recruiting tool. The tool was trained on 10 years of historical hiring data.
And because the tech industry has historically been heavily male-dominated, the algorithm mathematically learned to downgrade resumes that included the word women's.
Such as women's chess club captain. The AI wasn't programmed with malicious intent. It was mathematically optimizing based on the historical realities it was fed.
It is a perfect example of why you cannot blindly trust the machine without human oversight.
It is vital to separate true ethical governance from bare minimum compliance. Compliance is simply paying a penalty, like Amazon's massive €746 million fine for GDPR data processing violations.
That is just a legal cost of doing business. True ethics involves proactively auditing your data sets for historical biases, ensuring transparency in how your models make decisions, and understanding the human impact of your algorithms long before a regulator gets involved.
Which brings us to the final and perhaps most vital concept in Dr. Banerjee's book, The Art of Influence.
Yeah.
You can have flawlessly governed data, the most sophisticated predictive models, and an executive team free of cognitive bias. But if you cannot persuade another human being to act on your insights, none of it matters.
Because data does not change organizations. Human decisions change organizations.
And humans fundamentally make decisions based on narratives.
The book highlights Airbnb's early investor pitch deck as an absolute masterclass in this kind of influence.
When they were trying to secure initial funding, they didn't just walk into the room with dry spreadsheets and ETS forecasts.
They successfully blended hard analytical financial charts with deeply human-centered narratives. They included actual photos and personal stories of the hosts who were opening their homes to strangers.
They connected the hard mathematical data to real human meaning, and that narrative bridge is what ultimately secured their funding.
It is all about tailoring the narrative to the audience. Sometimes you need a purely analytical story to satisfy a skeptical chief financial officer.
Sometimes you need a deeply human-centered story to motivate a marketing department.
And sometimes you need a what-if scenario story to persuade a board to take a calculated risk under extreme uncertainty.
So let's recap this journey for you, the listener. If you want to stop drowning in raw information and start extracting real value, you have to actively climb that knowledge ladder.
You need to benchmark your performance internally and externally to find your true context.
You have to learn to spot long-term structural trends instead of reacting to cyclical blips. You need to move from describing the past to predicting ranges of probability.
You must treat your competitors as intelligent, reactive players on a chessboard.
And above all, you have to govern your data responsibly and learn to tell a compelling story with it.
So what does this all mean for your daily routine? It means that being a truly data-driven professional in today's landscape isn't about learning how to code complex Python scripts or build machine learning algorithms from scratch.
Right.
It is entirely about institutionalizing a culture of rigorous curiosity. It is about training yourself to ask the right, context-driven questions, to deeply understand the realities of human trade-offs, and to constantly guard against your own mental shortcuts.
Which leaves us with a final, slightly provocative thought for you to mull over as you head into your next strategy meeting.
Okay, let's hear it.
Throughout this deep dive, we've focused heavily on the knowledge ladder, how it is currently the human's job to turn automated information into context-driven knowledge and insight. But generative AI is evolving at a staggering pace. As these systems learn to automatically spot structural trends, run their own conjoint analyses, and simulate complex game theory scenarios in a matter of seconds, will the purely human ability to formulate the right moral and strategic questions become the absolute last, unautomatable competitive advantage left in the business world?
That really is the multi-million-dollar question we're all going to have to answer very soon.
It really is. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Keep asking the right questions, and we'll see you next time.